It's Marty Braden once again. It looks like suffering versus sanctity caught your attention. If this is your first time watching one of my videos, welcome to my channel. Let me explain quickly what my channel is about because I think it'll help you enjoy them more fully if you understand the why behind the topics. I always want to say this because I know most folks at first glance tend to think that I'm not a professional YouTuber, and that's because you don't see any fancy high-techy production stuff with my content. But I'm still confident you'll find my videos be interesting and quite informative, especially if you don't know much about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which is often called the Mormons. I get all of my topics from my book I recently wrote titled An Atheist Delusion. It's my Latter-day Saint perspective on Richard Dawkins' book, The God Delusion. As you know, Richard's an atheist and an evolutionary biologist who absolutely hates religion of any kind. In fact, he said that his purpose for writing his book was to make atheists out of all of us. Anyway, after I published An Atheist Delusion, I decided to set up this YouTube channel and record and post short videos of me reviewing every single anti-God argument Dawkins puts forth in his book. And so far, I've posted 111 videos in my series. And so the video you're watching now is part 112 in that series. Let's pick things up where I left off last time. Sanctity is the state or quality of being holy, sacred, and saintly, such as the site of the tomb where Jesus' crucified body was laid. It's sanctified, and it's a sanctuary. It's also the sanctity of the place where all of us are laid to rest when we pass, such as a gravesite. They're sacred too. They're sanctified. All these are places of sanctity. I submit that the place where a baby resides until its birth, its mother's womb, in other words, is also a place of sanctity and holiness. Now, picking up on the subtitle, it says this: faith and the sanctity of human life. That's why I did that little rundown just then. Richard summarized this subtitle by saying, suffering is hard to measure, and the details might be disputed, but that doesn't affect my main point, he says, which concerns the difference between secular consequential and religiously absolute moral philosophies. One school of thought cares about whether embryos can suffer, he says. The other cares about whether they are human. Religious moralists, there goes Richard labeling or branding folks into a single group again, he says, can be heard debating questions like, quote, when does the developing embryo become a person, a human being? Secular moralists are more likely to ask the question, Richard says, like, never mind whether it is human, what does that even mean for a little cluster of cells? He says, at what age or state of development does any developing embryo of any species become capable of suffering, end quote. President Russell M. Nelson, who I've said before is the current president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and the chief apostle and prophet, gave a talk in October of 2008 when he was a member of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles then, which he titled Abortion and Assault on the Defenseless. President Russell is soon to be 99 and is remarkable. You'll be the judge if you listen to his talks. It's quite just absolutely stunningly wonderful talks. Let me mention that President Nelson was a highly regarded heart surgeon, and so he most certainly understood science, biology, and the physical body. I'm going to share just a small portion of President Nelson's remarks where he outlines the stance, and therefore it's my personal stance and perspective on this sensitive topic called abortion, and I quote, as sons and daughters of God, we cherish life as a gift from Him. His eternal plan provides opportunities for His children to obtain physical bodies. That's one main point why we came here, is to gain a physical body that will be resurrected and will have it forever. To gain experiences and to realize their divine destinies as heirs of eternal life. With that understanding and reverence for life, we deplore the loss of life associated with warfare. These data are appalling. In World War I, more than 8 million military fatalities occurred. In World War II, more than 22 million servicemen and women died. Together, these two wars, covering portions of 14 years, cost the lives of at least 30 million soldiers worldwide. That figure does not include the millions of civilian casualties. Man. These data, however, are dwarfed, he says, by the toll of another war that claims more casualties annually than did World War I and World War II combined. Worldwide reports indicate that there are more than 55 million abortions are performed per year worldwide as of 2022. This war called abortion is a war on the defenseless and the voiceless, President Nelson says. He continues, it is a war on the unborn. This war is being waged globally. Ironically, civilized societies that have generally placed safeguards on human life have now passed laws that sanction this practice. This matters greatly to us because the Lord has repeatedly declared this divine imperative, quote, thou shalt not kill. Then President Nelson adds, nor do anything like unto it. Even before the fullness of the gospel was restored, enlightened individuals understood the sanctity of human life. The sanctity of human life. John Calvin, a 16th century reformer, wrote, it seems more horrible to kill a man in his own house than in a field. And if that's true, it ought to surely to be deemed more atrocious to destroy a fetus in the womb before it has come to light. End quote. Man-made rules have now legalized that which has been forbidden by God from the dawn of time, President Nelson says. He continues, human reasoning has twisted and transformed absolute truth, objective truth, into soundbite slogans that promote a practice that is consummately wrong, end quote. That's the end quote by President Nelson. Now, if I have understood the arguments Richard Dawkins gave in this subtitle, he would place President Nelson and myself in his grouping of consequentialists and absolutists, calling President Nelson's remarks slippery slope arguments, and would call President Nelson a rebellious or religious foe, of abortion. Richard would describe President Nelson's stance as well as my stance on this issue as being an absolute stance because we believe an embryo is a baby and killing it is murder. And that's that. End of discussion. Richard goes on to bring in the argument of IVF, intravitreal fertilization, and the inconsistency that Richard says is apparent when you reflect on the fact that society already accepts IVF, in which doctors routinely stimulate women to produce surplus eggs to be fertilized outside the body. Therefore, IVF, he says, kills conceptuses at 2 stages of the procedure, and society has no problem with this, end quote. I would ask, Richard, are eggs in and of themselves at this stage, which is before the life-generating process even began, meaning life starts, a person? Has the conception of life been consummated before the egg and the sperm are fertilized upon their coming together? The answer to both questions is no. This is not murder any more than sperm dying before it reaches the woman's unfertilized egg is any kind of murder. End quote. In Richard's effort to condemn his grouping of religious absolutists, which he would include me in being a part of, he continued by sharing what he sees as another inconsistency. A certain kind of religious mind cannot see the moral differences between killing a microscopic cluster of cells on the one hand and killing a full-grown doctor on the other. End quote. Richard is referring to, of course, the extremist killing and abortion of the abortion doctor, which is absolutely abhorrent too. I agree with him there. Richard points out that those people who are in the camp of right-wing anti-abortion extremists, such as the likes of Randall Terry and Operation Rescue and the Army of God, AOG, and any other extremist organization, end quote. Richard then labels these far-right extremists, using Paul Hill as an example, as dangerous, yes, but not a psychopath, dangerously religious. In other words, what was wrong with Paul Hill was his religious faith itself, end quote. Again, Richard doesn't seem to be able to separate religious faith and the sick mind of a religious nutjob. Since Richard has a hatred for all religion, he can't seem to help himself from being so biased and avoid his bigotry on this topic of religion and the religious. I do agree with Richard when he says strong opponents of abortion are almost all deeply religious. That's probably true. The sincere supporters of abortion, whether personally religious or not, are likely to follow a non-religious, consequential moral philosophy, he says, end quote. However, I am not sure what Richard means by strong opponent. I oppose abortion and am therefore pro-life, but I do not have any hate in my heart for those who are pro-choice and want to protect their so-called pro-choice rights, even though the act of abortion itself appalls me. Richard's last point is that early embryos have no nervous system, and so most certainly those embryos at certain stages in the mother's womb, do not suffer when aborted. Of course, this depends on how far along the embryo is at the time of the abortion. Is the embryo a fetus? In my mind, it is not a question of suffering either way. It is a question about life itself and the value God has placed on life and its potential. When does life begin? The question is asked. For me, is the most important question in this debate, or what some call battle. It is my belief that life, human life, and not just life itself, begins at fertilization, conception. I would have you watch the YouTube video called, and this is the title, "The Number One Mistake Christians Make When Discussing Abortion." It's done and hosted by Ken Ham, founder of Answers in Genesis and the Ark Encounter part. Do I agree with everything that Mr. Ham teaches and says? No. But what he teaches on this subject is incredibly informed, and I so appreciated what work and effort he put into it. So watch that video. My chief point is killing. Whether you call it so-called microscopic clusters of cells being sucked out of the mother's womb by an abortion doctor, or what I call the paganistic quasi-priest, or its full-term baby who is killed by the doctor moments after its birth, which is called infanticide. Killing is killing. Killing, destruction, removal, dismembering, causing death, no matter the stage the baby's development is in, all of it is killing a human being. If you were to stab a pregnant woman, let's say, to death by plunging a really long knife into her belly, the law of the land says that there were two murders committed, the mother and the not yet born baby. What is the difference then if you plunge a sulfur clamp up into the mother's womb and you grab, rip, and tear the baby into pieces? I'll comment about this ritual of abortion with those tools a little later, but just let's go ahead and move on to the next topics. But that, is there a difference? I think not. Murder is murder. Killing is killing. Now, I'm not attacking and shaming these mothers. I love God's daughters. I love God's sons. I don't like the behaviors and choices that many of us make. That is where sin, I do condemn sin. I don't condemn the individual person. I love God's children. And this is a very sticky topic for sure. But I think my little thumbnail that I shared there, suffering versus sanctity, a mother's womb is a holy place. It's a sanctified place. It is a place where one of God's children's physical body is formed. It's human from inception. All the information's in those two seeds and sperm and egg that come together to make a human being. It is a human being. It's a little baby that's a week old. It's older a month later, and it's older a year later. But did it stop being a baby after 1 week and now became a human being? Or was it a human being right from its inception? That's the argument, and I think science is on the side of what I speak. I don't think science says there's no, may have terms, zygote and, a fetus and all these names are descripting, but that is a human baby forming. That is a human baby developing. That is a child of God waiting to come into life and experience and gain his physical body as a gift from his heavenly Father and heavenly Mother. I'm telling you, this is a principle that is something we need to seriously consider. And murder is a serious, serious offense against God and his plan of happiness. So anyhow, write your questions, express yourself on either side of the coin. Be kindly still, remain kindly, and don't be contentious. And I'll do my best to answer your questions. I'd love to hear your comments, and I might learn some things even more than what I have. I want to understand you, and I've seen many videos on abortion and arguments at college campuses on that topic with a lot of young women, daughters of God, who believe that they're just a cluster of cells, that it's not killing. And I understand that thought process, but it is not objective. That's subjective. Science and what they say when life starts, that heart, usually about 3 weeks to 1 day, is when that heart beats, and that has its own blood system. It's just a remarkable miracle. And to destroy it in such a wicked and mean way of ripping body parts using that sulfur clamp, I just see it like a pagan priest going into its place where that woman offers herself up, and that doctor takes that baby out and destroys it piece by piece and lays it out for what? The safety of the mother, not of that child. That's child's safety. That's sacred womb, sacred place of living was vandalized and life was taken. Oh, again, that's my perspective as a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I love little babies. Obviously I did, and my wife did, because we had 8 of them, and we loved them. And every child is a gift from my Father in heaven to me and to my wife. But anyhow, I'll look forward to do my best to get to your questions and thoughts as quickly as possible. But until next time, I want to wish you continued success. Goodbye.